Hello and welcome to yet another Podcast Pontifications with me, Evo Terra. If you're watching this on video, this is not a podcast. This is a video about podcasting. You can get the podcast at podcastpontifications.com. Part 2 of our Know Your Podcast, Know Yourself series is all about making good first and last impressions for your show. Again, resolutions are one thing, but I would much rather you take a retrospective look at the things you've been doing if you're an existing podcaster, and have a good plan going forward if you are yet to have released a podcast. And today, I almost called this episode about, I almost called it hygiene. Remember when you were a kid? In middle school probably, and you did those weird classes that made you very uncomfortable, but you needed it because there was that one kid in the corner who stank? Okay, this is kind of it. I want to keep you from stinking. That's really my goal, because you might not even know. And really, I felt bad for that kid, because I don't think he really knew that he smelled as bad as he does, right? You can't smell it yourself, I've always heard. I hope. That's what I've heard. Hope nobody said that about me. But I want you to make sure that your podcast is making a good first and last impression. And as I did yesterday, I'm going to talk about 3 things today. We're going to talk about your intro, your outro, and then the music that is associated with those. Because those really make the best, those are the things that make the impression that you start with on your show and you leave someone with after they've listened to your episode. So the other day I was listening to a new podcast. I like to listen to all of the local Phoenix, Arizona-based podcasts at least once, at least add them to my subscription so I can see what's going on here in my own little city. And I listened to a new show the other day that had a 3.5-minute long piece of music without any vocal stuff to start their episode. 3.5 minutes of just music. No voiceover, no lyrics in the music, no possible explanation of what, just 3.5 minutes of music. What were you thinking? That makes 0 sense. Please don't do that. That's not helpful for anyone. I understand music is designed to set the mood for your show. And I want you, podcaster, to take a good, hard listen to the music you've been using for your show. And I want you to analyze it for a couple of things. Does it really set the tone that you're looking for? Do you really like this? Does it work? Does it really work for your show? But it can't be too long. If you think that your listeners need 3.5 minutes, you're wrong. Or even 30 seconds of music to get ready for your show, once again, you're wrong. People don't only listen to your show. It was once said that people spend more time listening to other podcasts than your podcast. Don't make someone suffer through your art piece. Unless, of course, you're making an art piece, and if you are, that's perfectly fine. But don't make people suffer through bad music. Don't make people suffer through the same music that a dozen other podcasts use. Seriously, a little more research wouldn't hurt you at all. It's a good time now to rethink the music bed that goes with your show, because it's going to set the stage. I've heard some music that makes 0 sense. It's just the wrong style, the wrong tone. So listen with a critical ear. Or better yet, go ask your audience. Go ask the people that are currently listening what they think about the show. And then ask people who have not yet listened to your show to just listen to the bed music you're using and see if it's right for your show or not, because it's a good time to make a change. Okay, that's bed music, which, by the way, sets this tone at the beginning and the end of your show. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is that intro. This is called Know Your Podcast, Know Yourself. When is the last time, existing podcaster, that you listened to your canned intro? Do you know what it says? Does it take a full minute of you explaining the entire premise of your podcast overall before someone gets to it? That's great for someone's first time listening, but they don't really want to sit through a minute of you explaining what the show is every single episode. So if you don't know what's in it, that's your first clue. If you can't recite your canned intro, that's a clue, because you're making an impression that's not very helpful on your long-time listeners. Maybe it works for the first timer, but think about the next time. I just edited a brand new show for a brand new client, and their intro was staccato, it was monotone, and it was a minute long, and it was not well done. So we're going to redo that whole thing, because we don't, as Sweet Brown said, ain't nobody got time for that. You got to go quicker inside of it. Now let's flip to the end. Let's talk about that last impression you leave someone, again with the bed music, and your outro. If you're using a canned outro, do you know what's in your canned outro? Did you pay some narrator or have a friend narrate your outro? Great, fine. I don't mind if you do that. In fact, I think it's a solid idea. I think it's a solid idea to drop in a canned outro to a show. Not the only way to do things, but it's one way to do things. Do you know what's in it? If you don't know what's in it, you're probably repeating yourself a couple of times. One, which is not great, which is not bad, but it's not great. And two, if there's a worse problem, it's that you're dumping nonstop garbage out at people. Follow me on these 14 different social media platforms. Don't forget to leave ratings and reviews, even though those are absolutely worthless for my show. And I want you to listen on these platforms. Oh, and by the way, here's my website and all this other crap. It's like you just had 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes with this listener, and now you're in, oh my God, here's all the things I didn't tell you. Garbage dump. Garbage dump. That's what you're leaving people with if you go all the way to the end with the canned outro. So I want to talk for a moment as we near the end of this one about the new hotness. If you've been doing this for a long time, you may not know that the new hotness in podcasting is to not have a canned intro and an outro, but instead to do the opening, the intro and the outro, if you will, the canned pieces, not canned, but actually live, and slightly modify them each and every week. Even better, the new hotness on top of that is to do something called a cold open. Now, a cold open is used in television shows all the time. When it's 7 o'clock and your favorite show comes on and the show just starts without the title sequence, that's a cold open. When Saturday Night Live happens and you get the first little skit before anything happens, that's called a cold open, because you didn't warm the audience by giving them the show. Cold open's nothing new, but it's kind of new in the podcasting space. So think about adding a cold open to your show, which is short, which is sweet, which is, I don't know, a minute, maybe 20 seconds is fine, which is a bit from the show, perhaps from the interview, if in fact it's an interview show. If not, you can record a little something special, drop that in the front. There's lots of ways you can do it. You don't have to follow the canned format. It's not bad to do that, but again, just so you know, the new hotness is cold open with a live read intro that is super short. Like host name, podcast name. Let's get into the show. That's a very good first impression, because now you've given people the true context of what's happening in your show. You can spend a little bit more time in the outro. You can spend more time in the outro if you want to. That's totally up to you. But it's really important, guys and gals and people of all colors in between. Make a good, solid first impression, because when people actually do listen, they have a lot of choices nowadays. There are a lot of content creators out there who are paying attention to how they leave impressions on people. And if you're not, you're leaving potential listeners on the table. There we go. Know your podcast, know yourself, know what's happening with your intros and your outros and all your bed music, and now's a good time to clean it up. Thank you for watching this one. If you need help working on your business-focused podcast, please get in touch with me. I launch podcasts for businesses and for professional service providers. Podcastlaunch.pro is my website. Contact me, evo@podcastlaunch.pro, and I'll be back tomorrow with yet another Podcast Pontifications. Cheers!